growing momentum on the issue, led by the state of California, which has completed an extensive study and put forth recommendations to enact reparations. California's reparations actions have huge nationwide implications. The California Task Force was the first of its kind in the nation, and the states of New York and Colorado recently voted to take on the issue. Dozens of cities from coast to coast, including San Francisco, Boston, Los Angeles, and Detroit, have started their own reparations commissions. One of the first known reparationists was Callie House, who toured the nation advocating for reparations in the 1890s. But never in this nation's history has the movement to heal the harms of enslavement, institutionalized racism, and the system of white supremacy seemed so strong. The topic remains untouchable for most elected officials, and the call for reparations has not yet garnered widespread public support. Polling shows that most Californians agree that black fellow citizens are still suffering from the damage done by slavery and Jim Crow, but they still do not support cash reparations. The California Legislative Black Caucus has introduced a package of proposals for bills that do not include 1 penny of cash compensation, restitution, or repair. Governor Newsom and other lawmakers have distanced themselves from the concept of cash payments. While Newsom is right, cash alone will not repair our collective harm, the state's goofy legislative package ignoring monetary payments is disingenuous. California lawmakers need to step up and put a reparations bill for cash payments on the table. The issue of how it is funded, the timeline, or whether it impacts our current budget challenges can be addressed. But we must strike while the iron is hot, or the window of opportunity will pass us by. If you agree that it's time for our lawmakers to add a bill enacting cash payments to their lineup, call them at 916-319-3868 and say, if it doesn't include cash, it ain't reparations. That's 916-319-3868. Tell him Callie House sent you. From Bruce's Beach to the California Task Force, the Golden State is a trailblazer when it comes to reparations. The world is watching. We must rise to the historical moment and set a precedent for cash payments along with legislative remedies and policies addressing the systemic badges of slavery and Jim Crow. We must insist on measures significant enough to help close the racial wealth gap. California must stand for cash, and the time for reparations is now. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dominique DiPrima. We welcome your comments.
I see the Peter. You know I got the Jones for my own Rashida. Can you put me on with the Nagarita? She stay on my dome, she gon' pull on me, pull like weed, entice me. She my queen. Yeah, whoa, yeah, whoa, yeah. She my queen.
KBLA Talk 1580. It is time for Heroes of Women's History. And I'm so excited to welcome in an abolitionist, organizer, educator, minister, and scholar. She is focused on womanist world making, prophetic spirituality, and Black women's grassroots organizing. Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet, good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. So good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for hanging out with us this morning, this beautiful Women's History Month Monday. So, you know, when we talk about women's history, there are, especially Black women, there are a few names that we hear over and over. We always hear Rosa Parks. We hear Harriet Tubman, Coretta Scott King, I guess more lately. I'm laughing because she's been in the news, and a few others, but we do not hear a lot of depth about who they really were and what they did. I think Shirley Chisholm probably goes on that list. And there are also other important figures of Black women's history which do not get as much light.
So I want to talk a little bit. I want to do a little bit of both, a little bit of delving deeper into people who we don't know as much about as we should, and putting light on some lesser known. Let's start with the simplest thing. Dr. Jones-Jolivet, which woman in Black history is like your personal inspiration, your go-to? Mine, of course, is Ida B. Wells, for obvious reasons.
Yes, I was going to say Ida B. Wells. I mean, there are so many, and so it's hard to choose one because I think that there's a multitude, right? Vincent Harding says there is a great river, right, that brings us here to this moment. But I would be remiss if I did not name Ida B. Wells, who on this day in 1931 made her transition to be an ancestor. So it is to me a divine appointment that we are having this conversation and invoking her name. Ashe?
Ashe. Ida B. Wells, a journalist. We know her as a journalist. We know her as someone who fought against lynching, and who believed in self-defense, clearly.
Absolutely.
What is it about her that resonates with you?
Yeah, so I love Ida B. Wells so much because she understood her assignment, on this earth. She's born into enslavement. I mean, and think about that. I think that, when we say those words, as a baby, she is born into a world that says that you are property, right? This is July 1st, 1862 in Mississippi, right? During the Civil War, by the way. And her parents are politically active, right? As the Civil War ends, she's got parents who become politically active during Reconstruction, and they are convinced that education for their family is the pathway. It's a tool for revolution, So ultimately, she goes on to, particularly after her parents and one of her siblings die because of the yellow fever epidemic, she goes on to college and begins to take care of her siblings. So she raises her brothers and sister, goes to college, takes care of the family, and begins to kind of build a life. And she very quickly learns, again, that she has an assignment as an educator, as a caregiver. And over time, she understands that she is here to set the crooked things straight, right? To turn the things that are upside down right. And so, very early in life, Ida B. Wells is, for example, as a white mob murders one of her friends, lynches Thomas Moss, who's business partners with Will Stewart and Calvin McDowell, who have a people's grocery store. Because Black people, right, are beginning to, in this period of Reconstruction, engage in commerce, build Black business, and white folks are threatened by Black economy, right? This is why lynching begins. And so they lynch her friend, Thomas Moss, and she decides in that moment that she's going to set out to investigate lynching on her own, self-funded, by the way, right? And she sets about, engaging in this very well-curated research process of really turning the sort of narratives of the murderers upside down to say, here is what actually happened. All these lies that they tell about why people are lynched, here's what happened. And there's nothing that you can say to justify murdering our people. The same work that we do today, this is what Ida B. Wells was doing in 1892, right? And she establishes the Red Record, which becomes an archive of all of the lynchings that are occurring as a way of counteracting these white supremacist forces that are terrorizing Black people. And they run her all around the country, right? These KKK members and other white supremacist terrorists, because they are threatened by truth-telling. And that's what she says. The way that you right wrongs is you shine the light of truth upon them. And so I love her witness, both with the Red Record, but also in the myriad of ways that she does this work. She files a lawsuit against a train car company because of unfair treatment when she's thrown off of a first-class train, despite the fact that she had a ticket to be on that train. She said, I'm going to use every tool in the toolkit, including the law, right? And I'm going to file a lawsuit because I had a ticket to be in first class, and they threw her off. And she said, in 1884, I'm going to file a lawsuit. And although she won that case locally, I think it was overturned in federal court because obviously these structures are inherently white supremacist and anti-Black. She nonetheless used every tool in the toolkit. And she fought to the very end as an educator, as someone who was one of the founders of the National Association for Colored Women's Club. She's a founding member of the Niagara Falls movement. And she fights until she makes her transition in Chicago on this day in 1931.
Yeah, a couple things that I would add. One is that she dies in 1931. I have a great-great-grandma, Adelphia, who I never met, who was born enslaved. And, folks in my family tend to live a long time. She was born enslaved and freed as a teenager.
That's right.
And I actually have a picture of her with my dad. And to me, this is just this is a reminder of how close we are. This woman died in 1931, Ida B. Wells.
1931.
But she was born as a baby. She was born into slavery. I mean, I guess she was like maybe a toddler when slavery ended, but that's in your DNA. That's your early childhood trauma. Yeah. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, this is encoded in her body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Intergenerationally, epigenetically, as she is born into this planet, right? Into existence.
Yeah.
And she carries multiple traumas, and in the midst of all of that, she sets about doing freedom work for her entire lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, that is just the spirit of resistance of that is so strong. Your early childhood memories are the enslavement of your people. You've witnessed the KKK riding on your family. You've had your own newspaper burned to the ground. And yet all you do is fight harder, harder, and harder. And I just love that spirit. To me, that is so inspiring. It's like, what? You're afraid to say what? You're afraid to do what? You better come on.
And listen, that's exactly right. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this, Dominique. Joining with what you're saying, she also confronted the white women in the suffrage movement, right, who were ignoring lynching, right? So they wanted to. So she brought this intersectional lens before we talked about intersectionality as kind of a sort of discourse, right? So she's traveling internationally, talking about lynching, talking about suffrage movements. And she's often ridiculed for this by these suffrage organizations because they don't want to confront lynching. And they don't want to deal with sort of suffrage movement for Black women either, right?
Yeah.
And she's saying, y'all going to do both.
Yep.
You're not going to ignore lynching, and you're not going to ignore Black women because we demand that you deal with all of us as Black people, all of us.
I also think it's worth noting that her first education was at Rust University, which was a freedmen's school, right? When we talk
That's
about,
right.
How did we access these things that when we those promises of, of Reconstruction, of the freedmen's era, are the things that we're looking to collect on now in the reparations movement. And she is partially a product of that, the Freedmen's School. And then, of course, she went to Fisk in Nashville.
She did.
But she started at a Freedmen's School.
She started at a Freedmen's School, and it is worth noting that she was expelled from Rust because she had a dispute with the president. And I mention that because she was in good trouble all the time. All the time. All the time. She was expelled by the president. And so, again, these disciplinary sort of punishment-oriented structures, right, they take hold everywhere. And she was not having it anywhere, including at Rust.
We're talking with Dr.
I'm just saying.
See, that's where I get my inspiration. Okay, we're talking to Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet. We are celebrating heroes of women's history. Let's have fun with this. Have fun and get smarter. That's what we do around here at KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce.
This election year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the place for politics. Unapologetically progressive politics. And we've got two of the best and brightest to help you cut through all the noise. Weekdays at 1 p.m., it's A More Perfect Union with Dr. Corte. And at 4 p.m., it's Areva Martin in Real Time. He's the university professor and distinguished member of the White House Correspondents Association. She's a best-selling author and Harvard-trained civil rights lawyer. And they are both here every day to help guide you through all the this year, because you know it's going to get deep. Get your politics on weekday afternoons at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. with A More Perfect Union, hosted by Dr. Corte and Areva Martin in Real Time, only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your flag.
Psst. Hey, I have a secret. I use Secret Whole Body Deodorant because more than just my armpits stink.
Oh, can I use it where my bra rubs under my...
Oh, yeah.
And what about down there? My...
Totally. 4 out of 5 gynecologists would recommend it. So I tried it, and now I get 72 hours of freshness from my pits to my...
Ooh, I love that it's a spray.
Me too. And it comes in sticks and creams too. Go get your Secret Whole Body Deodorant.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting and waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
It's game day at Jim's house, and the spread is impressive.
Mike's already done some damage with the hot wings, and now he's dropping back and going deep for another slice of pizza.
I sure hope he brought the Pepto.
Mike knows the Pepto-Bismol provides fast 5-symptom relief from unexpected stomach upsets. He's no rookie.
The way he's throwing back those nachos, he's the GOAT.
Be ready for game day with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique Baraka on KBLA Talk 1580.
And we are talking with Professor Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet. We're talking heroes of women's history. I knew we were going to go long on Ida B. Wells because she's like one of my favorite. But I'm glad you're here because, as we were saying, there are women that you really don't hear much about. Maybe you hear the name, but you don't hear anything in depth, or some, their names are not even so elevated. I think Ella Baker is one of those.
Yeah. I think Ella Baker is a name, maybe sort of, on this side of Black Lives Matter that people are hearing more and more.
Yeah.
And obviously because of the work of people like Barbara Ransby, who's done a lot of the academic work on Ella Baker, that we're hearing her name more and more. But Ella Baker, like we know of the genius of grassroots organizing and mobilizing because of an Ella Baker. And so I'd love to kind of say a little bit about her if we've got time to talk about her.
Absolutely. Let's talk about her, yeah.
Yeah, what I love about Ella Baker is, she is unimpressed with the sort of model of like a charismatic, patriarchal, single sort of leader who gets out in front, and that's kind of what you consider to be the movement. That's not sort of what impresses her, although she would certainly recognize and was certainly friends with and worked closely with a Martin King, right? But what she would say and did say is the movement made Martin. Martin did not make the movement. And what she meant by that, and this was no disrespect to Dr. King, was that Dr. King played a role among the masses, right? It was the people, the everyday, ordinary people, right, who had the capacity, as she would say, to decide for themselves sort of what they needed for their lives, right? To be able to engage in their own assessment of what was happening in their lives and in their world, and to be able to know and to understand how to interpret their world and to know how to move and transform it. That was the real genius of movement. And everyone then needed to play a part in that struggle. And that was really what the real democratic sort of Black freedom struggle was fundamentally about, not sort of propping up individual leaders, right? And so this is really kind of what we have learned in grassroots organizing from Ella Baker, that it's less about propping up individuals and more about mobilizing all of us, right? And most especially oppressed people that society wants to dispose of and throw away, right? That society treats as precarious, right? She says, those are the people who ought to be at the center driving the work because they have the best capacity and genius to know what is needed to move and to struggle and to really transform the world. And so they called her in Swahili the term fundi. And that means this is the one who teaches the next generation the craft. And that's what she did. She taught the people the craft, but she did it in such a way that she was often doing what we call invisible labor. She was not always the one on the mic, right? She would not be the one that you would often see. She was often the one doing the behind-the-scenes work, the very hard work, right, of helping to kind of build systems and structures and mobilizing people in the everydayness of movement building, which is the meetings and the relationship building and the navigating of conflict, right?
Yeah,
and
I think
who's gonna write these letters? Yeah.
I also think that what you're saying about the model of a charismatic leader, which again, charismatic leaders are important, but the thing that the model of teaching the craft, the science of organizing, much as Reverend James Lawson does, is partly the antidote to the over-reliance on charismatic leadership, right? Because without that science of organizing, it's just a person talking. If they are killed or if they get flipped to the dark side, as happens more often than we like to really remember, then you still have a base of people that know how to organize and get stuff done.
That's right. I mean, there are no mass sort of mobilizations without organizing, right? So who are you talking to, even if you do have a charismatic leader, right? If you're not mobilizing, for example, sanitation workers, if you're not, you
it's a great point, and I'm laughing because I know, especially in LA, there's so many so-called organizations with no members, and it's just one guy running around saying things and claiming to be a civil rights leader.
Exactly. And so, anyone who understands the deep work of struggle knows that There is no real struggle without grassroots organizing, and we are indebted to Ella Baker for teaching us the craft, and often doing it in ways that, again, that has been passed on generationally. And she's one of the ones who, people will often say she passed things on through praxis or practice, right? Not by writing anything down. She passed things on relationally,
which
right?
is more of an African paradigm, right? Anyway,
that's exactly right. That's exactly what I was going to say. And so I love that about Ella Baker. And she, as Cornel West will often say about her, she brought prophetic fire. And I think about that, and it just makes me really excited to be able to invoke her name and to think about how we see her work still alive today.
I mean, and Ella Baker,
presence as an ancestor.
She was part of the NAACP, right? She was like a secretary, and then she became kind of like the national organizer for the NAACP. But she also helped form the SCLC. She helped create the SCLC.
The SCLC.
And SNCC, right?
And of course, the SNCC. That's right. Yep. And then she, of course, joined CORE to organize the Freedom Rides. I mean, she was a part of the Greensboro sit-ins. I mean, just a deep, deep history. The Woolsworth Counter lunch sit-ins. I mean, deep history of organizing. She is at the center of a lot of it. And I love how, particularly when there's conflict in some of the organizations that she's moving in and out of, one of the things that she does in the midst of it is she says, I'm going to sit back. And she lets people work it out, right?
Interesting.
This is what Bob Moses says. She sits back as an elder and lets folks work it out because she understands that if she's going to really allow people to do the work, she's got to be willing to kind of sit and allow them to kind of struggle through it. And at one point, she takes care of her niece, who's very ill, and she steps back. And she's willing to do that and is capable of doing it. And Bob Moses says, hey, wait a minute, where are you going? We can't do this without you. And she goes, oh, yes, you can. I have prepared you to do this without me, right? So she, again, has taught the next generation the craft and can leave the space because she's prepared them to do so. So, again, I just love her, yeah.
Talking about Ella Baker, we're talking with Dr. Jones-Jolivet. More heroes of women's history when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A vote in the House to provide new aid to Ukraine could come sometime after Easter. That's what Texas Republican Michael McCall told CBS's Face the Nation. McCall said the situation in Ukraine is dire as forces run low on munitions and Russia makes progress in its invasion. A sweeping foreign aid package that includes funding for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific cleared the Senate last month. Queen Latifah is showing her love for Governor Wes Moore. During the recent NAACP Image Awards, the African-American rapper congratulated Moore for becoming Maryland's first black governor. Moore is only the fifth black person to serve as governor in the United States. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Turn your tax refund into a new ride at Nissan of Mission Hills and Gardena Nissan. Find a huge selection with over 1,000 vehicles in stock. Lease a new 2023 Rogue SV at $195 a month. Plus, lifetime oil changes on any new Nissan purchased there.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC and UCLA are back on the court tonight in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Both are at home for second-round games. UCLA takes on Creighton, 5:30 tip-off on ESPN2. The winner advances to the Sweet 16 to face defending national champion LSU in the Albany Regional. USC and Juju Watkins play Kansas tonight. Another sellout crowd is expected expected at the Galen Center, 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. The winner advances to the Sweet 16 in the Portland Regional. Arizona is the only Pac-12 conference team left in the NCAA men's tournament. Arizona has a Sweet 16 matchup Thursday night against Clemson at Crypto.com. Crypto is the site of the West Regional Finals. The Clippers are expecting to have Russell Westbrook back for tonight's home game against Indiana. Westbrook missed the last 12 games with a broken left hand. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
I have diabetes. I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I have asthma. I'm at risk too.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm-fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
No, I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Pizza's here. Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and talk to your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby. It's Jennifer Coolidge. Hi. I'm so glad I reached you at 2 a.m.
Oh, of course. Anyone with a Discover card can call and talk to a real person 24/7. Now, how can I help?
Yeah, I used my Discover card to buy these yellow pleather pajamas, and I'm just not sure I'm pulling them off.
24/7 U.S.-based customer service. It pays to Discover. Limitations apply. Learn more at discover.com/credit card.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistent scent. All over Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face. When it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah. Breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet. I know folks are tracking what you're talking about, heroes of women's history. Dr. Jones-Jolivet, how do we follow you and find out more about your work and the things you're doing?
Yeah, so you can follow me on X at Sister Dr. Tabatha, Tabatha, SISTA, Dr. Dr. Tabatha, Tabatha. On X, that's one way you can follow me. And of course, you can always join me at Black Lives Matter. I'm a member of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, and we are every Wednesday in front of the police associations at 1313 West 8th Street, chanting them down because we believe that we deserve, as the people, a world that invests in our flourishing, and that requires that we take the resources away from policing and invest them in all of the things that we know actually help us to thrive and to flourish.
And of course, one of the things you guys do at BLMLA is say their names. You say the names of people who have had their lives stolen by police violence. And we were talking off the air about some of the women, girls really, who have perished in the civil rights struggle, in the struggle for Black liberation. And you were talking about highlighting some of those.
Yeah, I was thinking about, the martyred daughters, Addie Mae Collins and Denise McNair and Carol Robertson and Cynthia Wesley, who were the four little girls whose lives were stolen in the white supremacist terrorism when the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed. That every time I think about them, I tremble, kind of thinking about those precious babies, those precious girls whose lives were stolen. And so it's important to always say their names and to remember them, to remember their spirits. And I also think about Alberta Williams King, Dr. King's own mother, who was also herself martyred. She was actually killed at church. And a lot of people don't remember this, but I think it's an important thing that we should not forget, that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mother, Alberta Williams King, was also martyred in the struggle. She was also killed, murdered. And so these are just a few names that I want to make sure that we lift as we continue to sort of think about those whose lives were stolen and those who fight to ensure that we become free as Black people.
Yeah, I mean, considering the insane tragedy of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King and all that his family went through being terrorized in this country by white supremacists, it is surprising that we don't hear more about the death of his mom.
Yeah, it is surprising. And yet, I think it also kind of tracks with, I think, the ways in which we often, as a society, don't keep track of the murders of Black women, right, and Black girls. This is kind of a chronic pattern, I think, societally, and it speaks to, I think, a particular kind of phenomenon where misogynoir, right, sort of the erasure of Black women and Black girls and the harm that we experience uniquely is an ongoing sort of violence that is a part of the sort of systemic realities and conditions of living in these territories in the United States, but also globally. And I think when you look at Say Her Name, even as a project, part of why that project was initiated is for the very reason that the lives of Black women are often erased when we track systemic violence. And we can see that again in the assassination of Martin Luther King's own mother, which occurred in 1974.
It's just, a few years after Dr. King's own assassination.
That's right. He's assassinated in 1968, right? And his mother's assassinated in 1974. And how often do we hear that, right?
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
It never happens. Yeah. So I think saying her name and again, in her memory, in her legacy, doing the work, as Melina Abdullah will often say, doing the work.
Well, I mean, a couple things about that, though. First of all, if if a Kennedy's mom had been, if, either of the Kennedy's mothers had been shot right after they were, or, 5-6 years after they were, it would be legendary in the fabric of this country in terms of like the tragic history of that family that we always talk about. But the other thing is, similar to the murder or the assassination of Malcolm X, Dr. King's mom was the man that was arrested for her murder. It was a black man.
Right. And, again, I think that when we talk about, this is my analysis of sort of how we sort of need to grapple with violence. And this is where I rely on an Angela Davis and a Ruth Wilson Gilmore to help us think about violence, not merely as sort of interpersonal, or only intercommunal, right? But that, and this is Angela Davis, like all violence at its root is grounded in state violence, right? And so when we talk about the conditions of state violence that in the first place brutalized this family and created the conditions under which her own son was assassinated in the first place, the conditions under which she and her own family lived under racial apartheid in the first place, it's those conditions systemically over centuries of time that created the brutality that fundamentally, right, led to the kind of violence that ultimately stole her life. And that's not to remove accountability from community violence, but it is to recognize the role of the state in, again, being a kind of anti-state, right? In creating the conditions of death dealing. And her own son would say that the greatest perpetuator of violence is the United States itself, right? That is the condition that I think she was living in. Those are the conditions in which her son was assassinated. And this, of course, occurs after he's given one of his most courageous speeches ever that he's assassinated a year later, when he speaks out against the war, against Vietnam. And he is canceled. He is canceled largely by most Black moderates, right? He is canceled certainly by the white supremacists, let alone the white supremacists who are on the moderate side of things. And he is, without question, having already been surveilled and targeted, he's even that much more at risk. So she understood this, certainly, the role of the structural violence, and it ultimately, at the end of the day, stole her life. So thinking about this family with all of their losses, but also thinking about the ways in which they have, as a family collectively, including the lives of Mrs. Coretta Scott King, have continued to bear witness to radical love and what that requires of us, right, in our lifetimes.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Have you fallen behind on your water and power bill? LADWP has made paying your past due bills even easier. Sign up anytime online for Level Pay to get set monthly bills that include past due amounts. Or check out the special extended payment arrangements of up to 48 months to help pay down your bill. Visit ladwp.com/cares and sign up today. That's ladwp.com/cares. Fight climate change. This Earth Day, April 22nd, go Metro and ride for free. You'll make a difference. Metro buses run on clean energy, making every day Earth Day. Together, we can clear the air and connect our communities. Start your journey at metro.net.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
Okay, a couple things real quick before we jump back into this Heroes of Women's History. A judge in New York has given Trump 10 more days to post a bond, so Letitia James will not be seizing Trump Tower for the state of New York today. It also means that he can keep running his business. His sons can keep running his business for the time being. They also cut the amount of the bond more than in half, down to the necessary amount he's got to post is $175 million, down from $464 million. When do black people get those kind of breaks? I'm just saying, this guy has been babied in every single way by the Supreme Court and the doggone courts in general, but I believe he will reach the end of the line shortly. Also, the United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The U.S. abstained from this one, and 14 council members voted for the resolution. So again, the U.S. abstains. UN Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, the black woman doing the U.S. dirty work in the UN Security Council right now, said, "We didn't agree with everything on the resolution," so she abstained, but she also made a point to blame Hamas for delaying the ceasefire resolution. Interesting, though, that after pushing for a U.S. version, which was rejected by Russia and China, a resolution for a ceasefire, pushing for a ceasefire, has in fact passed the UN Security Council. Wanted to break in on our conversation with those quick updates as we continue talking with Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet, who is a professor, a PhD, an abolitionist, an organizer, an educator, and a minister, and speaking on Heroes of Women's History. You wanted to speak about Mamie Till, not a lesser-known figure. In fact, I think there's been a couple of Hollywood movies about her in recent years, but still an important figure. And then another thing, when people start getting the Hollywood treatment, I think it maybe is important to talk to historians and scholars about them so we can separate what is the Hollywood taking liberties version and what is the historical version of their lives.
Absolutely, right. And so, I think Mamie Till, should forever be sealed in our minds and hearts and spirits for her courage, because she was enlisted into, a community of mothers and family members that no one wants to ever be a part of. And I know she is a part of a group of women, that I think about a lot, including women like Lisa Hines, the mother of Waukesha Wilson, and Waukesha Wilson's aunt, who is Sister Sheila Hines. So Mamie Till, of course, is a name that we all know. I hope we all know. And we know Mamie Till because her precious baby, Emmett Till, was stolen when white supremacists stole his life on August 28, 1955. When Carolyn Bryant, who only passed away, a white woman who only passed away within the last couple of years, I think it was, Dominique. I think it's only been maybe a year and a half now. Carolyn Bryant lied on Emmett and said that he had done something inappropriate. At one point, she said that he had said something inappropriate. At another point, she said that he had touched her inappropriately. But this is a part of a long pattern of lies, right, about Black boys that are told often by white girls and white women. And that ultimately led to the theft of Emmett Till's life and the brutal theft of his life. And he was with his family in Money, Mississippi, visiting from Chicago. He was there for the summer. And so you can imagine, he's there with his family in the South visiting, there because his mother wants him to be with his cousins and family members for the summer, and for her to have to sort of deal with this unsurvivable situation, right? She decides that his death, his murder, will not be in vain. And she courageously says, they have disfigured my baby. They find his body in the river, right? And it's decomposed. She says, leave his casket open. And she allows Jet Magazine, right, to post these images, right, on the magazine so that every Black family sees it and shows the viciousness of white supremacy.
Hold that thought, Dr. Jones-Jolivet, as difficult as it is to hold. Continuing Heroes of Women's History when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power. KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California, home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising at KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you Black.
Don't shave with that, son. You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops. I'm good with Gillette's Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard anyway? You know Mama hates it.
Yeah, had it since my last wet shave in 77. Got ingrown so bad, looked like I was growing a patch of new noses.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturize, so I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Time flies when you are on the radio, and we're talking with Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet. You were talking about Amy Till. We just got about 3 minutes. I know you wanted to speak on Georgia Gilmore, so maybe you can do the Cliff's Notes version on Ms. Gilmore, who's one of the people, as part of the New York Times Overlooked No More series, that they never originally did obituaries for these folks when they died because they didn't consider them important enough. And then they went back in 2019 and started doing them. She's one of those.
Yeah. So, Emmett Till, of course, is murdered. His mother, ensures that there's an open casket. And this, of course, catalyzes the Montgomery bus boycott. Georgia Gilmore is the woman who starts essentially this sort of system of transportation that allows for people to raise money to figure out a counter way of getting to work, right? Because nobody's taking the bus for 381 days. And so she starts cooking. She sets up kitchen, sets up shop. She's cooking dinner from fish, fried fish to potatoes and sweet potatoes in particular, stewed greens and pound cakes, you name it. And she's doing it out of her house to be able to sell these things so that folks can figure out a way to get to work, because for all of this time, they have no other form of transportation and they've got to figure out a way to do it. And so there's this radical creativity, right, in the form of a Georgia Gilmore who is helping to raise money to finance the Montgomery bus boycott, including financing a counter system of transportation that helps to fund hundreds of cars and trucks and various forms of transportation around town. It's kind of like their own version of Uber, essentially. This is happening, right? And you would not know this, but these are the kind of everyday Black people and everyday creativity of our grandmamas and aunties and cousins, right, that make movements. And this is, to me, what's so beautiful about struggle. And so we lift up their names with great honor because they have brought us to where we are in this struggle today.
Dr. Tabatha Jones-Jolivet, thank you so much for joining us this morning in this rich conversation about heroes of women's history.
Thank you, Dominique. You have a great day. Y'all take it easy.
And you can find her at Sista Dr. Tabatha, SISTAHDRTABATHA, Sista Dr. Tabatha. You can find us at KBLA 1580, and of course I'm at DiPrima Radio, DIPRIMA. And then radio, I'm going to a quote from Ella Baker for my quote of the day. She says, "Give light and people will find the way." Give light and people will find the way. Giving light every day around here. Tavis Smiley, he's up next. I'm sure he'll have quite a lot to say about this breaking news on the ceasefire and the other breaking news about Donald Trump getting yet another little babying break from the courts. So looking forward to hearing from Tavis Smiley and his incredible show today, 3 hours strong. I'm Dominique DiPrima. I'll see you on socials. History is now, and we are making it together. Until tomorrow, be safe, stay informed. One love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A vote in the House to provide new aid to Ukraine